It was just after lunch when my phone rang, and I saw my sister's name flash across the screen. I almost didn't answer. She's the type to call over the smallest thing, from spotting a squirrel in her garden to needing a ride to the store. But something in me told me to pick up, and when I did, I immediately wished I'd been wrong. Her voice was trembling, thin, and tight with pain. She gasped, they broke my arm. My whole body went cold. I asked her where she was, but she kept talking in broken sentences, blurting out details between sobs. They said they were with the HOA. They had clipboards, said there was a violation, told me I had to sign something. I wouldn't. One grabbed me. Twisted, her voice cracked, and I could hear her breathing quicken. The fact that someone touched her like that was enough to light me up inside, but the words, fake HOA, and broke my arm, together sent my instincts into overdrive. She'd just moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where neighbors wave politely while hiding behind their blinds. Her HOA had a reputation for being strict, but violent. That didn't add up. And if they weren't real officers of the HOA, that meant one thing: imposters looking for trouble. I told her not to move, to stay exactly where she was, and hung up before she could argue. My pulse was pounding in my ears, and I felt that old, familiar clarity settle over me, the kind that came in the military when the situation went bad, and you had seconds to decide who walked away and who didn't. I called my guys. My SWAT isn't technically a police SWAT team. We're all former special forces, law enforcement, or private contractors who've worked together for years. We're fast, precise, and we don't wait for red tape when someone's in danger. It took me less than 30 seconds to relay what happened, drop her address, and tell them to kit up for a direct confrontation. While I grabbed my gear, my mind kept replaying her voice, the way she tried to keep calm but couldn't hide the pain. She's tough, tougher than she looks, and if they'd managed to hurt her this badly, they were either much stronger than they looked or too reckless to care. Either way, that made them dangerous. By the time I roared out of my driveway, my truck loaded with tactical gear, two of my team were already en route from different directions. We didn't need to plan much, our moves were muscle memory. When I reached her street, I spotted them instantly. Two men in cheap polos with a fake HOA logo printed on the chest were standing in her driveway. One was holding a clipboard like it was a badge of authority, the other scanning the street nervously. Their act fell apart the moment you looked closely. The logos were off-center, their radios were the wrong kind, and their ID badges hung from flimsy lanyards you'd see at a kid's science fair. I pulled over 2 houses down, giving myself a clear line of sight but keeping my presence hidden. My sister was sitting on the front porch steps, cradling her arm, pale but glaring at them. She'd been through enough to know they weren't who they said they were. My guys rolled in almost simultaneously. One came from the far end of the street, the other from the crossroad. We moved in with practiced precision, no shouting, no drawn-out posturing. The fake officers didn't even see it coming until they had the unmistakable sound of weapons being charged behind them. Hands where I can see them. One of my men barked, his voice sharp enough to cut the air. The guy with the clipboard spun around, eyes wide, mouth opening to speak, maybe to protest, maybe to run. Didn't matter. A second later, both were on the pavement, their knees locked, hands behind their heads, faces pressed to the hot asphalt. My sister was breathing hard, trying to stay upright, and I was by her side in 2 strides. Her arm was already swelling, and the angle was wrong. I wanted to check it, but she grabbed my shirt with her good hand. "Don't let them go," she whispered fiercely. "They're not going anywhere, I promised." And they weren't. One of the guys started spitting out excuses. "We were just trying to," but my teammate shut him up with a single, quiet, "Don't." We'd seen this act too many times. Fake authority figures who thought the right shirt and some paperwork could get them into homes, cars, or bank accounts. Sometimes they were scammers. Sometimes worse. Neighbors had started to peek out from behind their curtains, phones in hand, recording. The street was dead silent except for the low hum of my truck and the sound of one of the imposters breathing hard into the pavement. 3 minutes. That's all it had taken from the moment I got to her street to the moment they were face down, compliant, and no longer a threat. But as I looked at my sister's arm, at the bruise already blooming along her forearm, I felt the kind of rage that doesn't burn out quickly. The kind that doesn't care how small the crime might look to someone else. They had come to her home, put hands on her, and hurt her while pretending to be something they weren't. That made it personal. We waited for the real police, who took over with more questions than action, as usual. My guys handed over the evidence, the fake IDs, the clipboard, the ridiculous violation notice, that was just a printed piece of paper with random legal terms mashed together. As they loaded the imposters into the cruiser, one of the neighbors finally came outside and asked me what had happened. I kept my voice calm, but my answer was short. They knocked on the wrong door. The truth was, they'd made the mistake of thinking they could intimidate someone I care about and walk away. And now, they were going to find out just how long that mistake would follow them. Do you want me to continue with part 2 where the investigation reveals who sent them? Alright, here's your expanded part 2 at about 1,000 words, keeping it flowing like a gripping narrative without headings. 3 minutes feels like a blink when adrenaline's already roaring through your bloodstream, but when I hit send on that alert, the world slowed to syrup. My sister's voice was still in my head, that sharp, breathless scream from seconds earlier when one of those self-appointed HOA officers twisted her arm back until it snapped. They weren't real HOA, no one on the street had ever seen them before, but they'd come swaggering up in matching polos, clipboards, and the smug certainty of people who thought they owned the ground they walked on. When I came around the corner, she was on the ground, clutching her arm, eyes wide and wet with pain. The tallest of the 3 men smirked like it was a game. He said something about trespassing violations on her own lawn. I didn't waste time with back and forth. My hand went to my comm and I hit the call out code. No explanations needed. My crew, my old SWAT team, didn't ask why. They just moved. In those 3 minutes, the world changed shape. Sirens didn't wail. There was no flashing blue and red to warn the men. Just the quiet hum of tires, the faint metallic jingle of gear, the sound of boots on asphalt. The first SUV slid to a stop at the corner like a predator crouching in the grass. The side doors opened, and 4 figures stepped out, black-clad and armored, visors down. The street went still. The fake officers noticed them about 2 seconds too late. The smallest one, the one with the clipboard, stammered something about private security and authorized inspection. My lead guy, Marcus, didn't even answer. He had his M4 up, barrel low but ready, his voice calm as stone, hands where I can see them. Now, the tallest man, the same one who'd hurt my sister, tried to square his shoulders. Wrong move. 2 of my team moved in, fluid and fast, cutting off his angle. Another had the 3rd man already backed against the curb, the butt of his weapon hovering just shy of his ribs. They weren't here to debate HOA bylaws. From where I stood, it was like watching a chess match where all the pieces move at once. Every step was calculated. One man knelt beside my sister, scanning her arm but keeping eyes up, weapon angled across his body. Possible fracture, he muttered into comms. We'll evac her as soon as the scene's secure. The tallest man started mouthing off about citizens' rights, but Marcus shut him down with a single step forward. On your face. Now. His tone left no room for misunderstanding. The man hesitated for half a breath, and that was it. The nearest SWAT member hooked his arm, spun him, and sent him down onto the asphalt with a flat, hard thump. The clipboard guy followed seconds later, his fake badge skittering across the street. The sound of zip ties tightening was oddly satisfying. So was the way the men's bravado drained out of them once their wrists were pinned behind their backs. All that puffed-up authority they'd been throwing around turned to stammering and weak protests about misunderstandings and mistaken identities. Marcus glanced at me. You want them talking before we hand them off. I stepped closer, the crunch of gravel loud in the quiet street. Yeah, I said. My voice came out steady, but my pulse was still a hammer in my ears. I want to know who sent them. The clipboard guy looked up from the ground, lips trembling. Nobody sent us, we're just. He cut himself off when one of my guys shifted his weight and the zip tie bit deeper into his wrists. Try again, I said, crouching so my eyes were level with his. You don't just pick a random neighborhood, dress like you run it, and start breaking bones. Who paid you? It was the third man, the quiet one, who cracked first. It was a job, he said, words spilling fast. We got told there was a problem property to make the owner feel like they had to sell. That's all. Just intimidation. His eyes flicked to my sister. Didn't mean to. Shut up, the tall man barked from the ground, but it was too late. The damage was done. Marcus gave me a look that said, your call. I nodded. Get them in the transport. Full report for the sheriff. And pull the job details off them before they disappear into the system. 2 more unmarked SUVs rolled up just as the first wave of my team loaded the men inside. The neighborhood had started to wake up now, curtains twitching, doors creaking open. Mrs. Heller from 3 houses down stood on her porch in her robe, mouth open in shock. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" But no one stepped closer. The sight of black gear and precision movements tends to keep people at a distance. My sister was pale but holding it together, her arm secured in a temporary sling. One of the medics knelt beside her, murmuring reassurances while checking her vitals. She caught my eye, tried to smile, but her mouth trembled. I wanted to walk over and hug her, but the anger was still too raw. I knew if I touched her now, I'd end up looking back at those men with a kind of rage that wasn't useful. Not yet. As the last of the fake officers was loaded into the SUV, Marcus walked over. This isn't random, he said quietly. The files on that clipboard. Your sister's property records were in there. Somebody's trying to squeeze her out. I exhaled slowly. Then we're going to squeeze back. He smirked, just a little, and clapped my shoulder. Already pulling traffic cam footage. We'll have their employer in 48 hours. The engines rumbled to life, and the convoy rolled out, smooth and controlled, as if the whole thing had been a drill. All that was left was the faint smell of rubber on asphalt, the shallow breathing of the neighbors still watching from their windows, and the realization that this wasn't over. I crouched next to my sister finally, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. We're going to find out who did this, I said. Her eyes, glassy with pain and adrenaline, locked on mine. Make sure they regret it. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. If you want, I can now take this and write part 3 as the high-stakes follow-up where they hunt down whoever ordered the fake HOA hit job, with even more intensity and twists.